March 17. When I waked up this morning, right away, I thought I was going to be smart. But I'm not. Every morning I think I'm going to be smart, but nothing happens. Maybe the experiment didn't work. Maybe I won't get smart, and I'll have to go live at the Warren home. I hate the tests, and I hate the amazeds, and I hate Algernon. I never knew before that I was dumber than a mouse. I don't feel like writing any more progress reports. I forget things, and even when I write them in my notebook, sometimes I can't read my own writing, and it's very hard. Miss Kinnian says, have patience, but I feel sick and tired, and I get headaches all the time. I want to go back to work in the bakery and not write progress reports anymore. March 20. I'm going back to work at the bakery. Dr. Strauss told Professor Niemer it was better I should go back to work, but I still can't tell anyone what the operation was for, and I have to come to the lab for 2 hours every night after work for my tests and keep writing these dumb reports. They're going to pay me every week, like for a part-time job, because that was part of the arrangement when they got the money from the Wellberg Foundation. I still don't know what that Wellberg thing is. Miss Kinnian explained me, but I still don't get it. So if I didn't get smart, why are they paying me to write these dumb things? If they're going to pay me, I'll do it. But it's very hard to write. I'm glad I'm going back to work because I miss my job at the bakery and all my friends and all the fun we have. Dr. Strauss says I should keep a notebook in my pocket for things I remember. And I don't have to do the progress reports every day, just when I think of something or something special happens. I told him nothing special ever happens to me, and it don't look like this special experiment is going to happen neither. He says, don't get discouraged, Charlie, because it takes a long time and it happens slow and you can't notice it right away. He explained how it took a long time with Algernon before he got 3 times smarter than he was before. That's why Algernon beats me all the time in that amaze race, because he had that operation too. He's a special mouse, the first animal to stay smart so long after the operation. I didn't know he was a special mouse. That makes it different. I could probably do that amazed faster than a regular mouse. Maybe someday I'll beat Algernon. Boy, would that be something. Dr. Strauss says that so far, Algernon looks like he might be smart permanent, and he says that's a good sign, because we both had the same kind of operation. March 21. We had a lot of fun at the bakery today. Joe Karp said, "Hey, look where Charlie had his operation. What did they do, Charlie? Put some brains in?" I was gonna tell him about me getting smart, but I remembered Professor Niemer said no. Then Frank Riley said, "What did you do, Charlie? Open a door the hard way?" That made me laugh. They're my friends, and they really like me. There's a lot of work to catch up. They didn't have anyone to clean out the place because that was my job, but they got a new boy, Ernie, to do the deliveries that I always done. Mr. Donner said he decided not to fire him for a while to give me a chance to rest up and not work so hard. I told him I was all right, and I can make my deliveries and clean up like I always done, but Mr. Donner says we will keep the boy. I said, "So what am I going to do?" And Mr. Donner patted me on the shoulder and says, "Charlie, how old are you?" I told him, 32 years, going on 33 my next birthday. "And how long you been here?" he said. I told him I didn't know. He said, "You came here 17 years ago. Your Uncle Herman, God rest his soul, was my best friend. He brought you in here, and he asked me to let you work here and look after you as best I could. And when he died 2 years later, and your mother had you committed to the Warren home, I got them to release you on outside work placement. 17 years it's been, Charlie. And I want you to know that the bakery business is not so good, but like I always said, You got a job here for the rest of your life. So don't worry about me bringing in somebody to take your place. You'll never have to go back to that Warren home." I ain't worried. Only what does he need Ernie for to deliver and work around here, when I was always delivering the packages good? He says, "The boy needs the money, Charlie, so I'm going to keep him on as an apprentice to learn him to be a baker. You can be his assistant and help him out on deliveries when he needs it." I never was a assistant before. Ernie is very smart, but the other people in the bakery don't like him so much. They're all my good friends, and we have lots of jokes and laughs here. Sometimes somebody will say, "Hey, look at Frank," or Joe, or even Gimpy. "He really pulled a Charlie Gordon that time." I don't know why they say it, but they always laugh, and I laugh too. This morning, Gimpy, he's the head baker and he has a bad foot and he limps. He used my name when he shouted at Ernie because Ernie lost a birthday cake. He said, "Ernie, for God's sake, you trying to be a Charlie Gordon?" I don't know why he said that. I never lost any packages. I asked Mr. Donner if I could learn to be an apprentice baker like Ernie. I told him I could learn it if he gave me a chance. Mr. Donner looked at me for a long time funny, because I guess I don't talk so much most of the time. And Frank heard me, and he laughed and laughed until Mr. Donner told him to shut up and go tend to his oven. Then Mr. Donner said to me, "There's lots of time for that, Charlie. A baker's work is very important and very complicated, and you shouldn't worry about things like that." I wish I could tell him and all the other people about my real operation. I wish it would really work already, so I could get smart like everybody else. March 24. Professor Niemer and Dr. Strauss came to my room tonight to see why I don't... March 24. Professor Niemer and Dr. Strauss came to my room tonight to see why I don't come into the lab like I'm supposed to. I told them I don't want to race with Algernon no more. Professor Niemer said I don't have to for a while, but I should come in anyway. He brought me a present, only it wasn't a present, but just for lend. He said it's a teaching machine that works like TV. It talks and makes pictures, and I gotta turn it on just before I go to sleep. I said, "You're kidding. Why should I turn on a TV before I go to sleep?" But Professor Niemer said if I want to get smart, I gotta do what he says. So I told him I didn't think I was going to get smart anyway. Then Dr. Strauss came over and put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Charlie, you don't know it yet, but you're getting smarter all the time. You won't notice it for a while, like you don't notice how the hour hand on a clock moves. That's the way it is with the changes in you. They're happening so slow you can't tell. But we can follow it from the tests and the way you act and talk and your progress reports." He said, "Charlie, you've got to have faith in us and in yourself. We can't be sure it will be permanent, but we are confident that soon you're going to be a very intelligent young man." I said, "Okay," and Professor Niemer showed me how to work the TV that really wasn't a TV. I asked him what did it do. First he looked sore again, because I asked him to explain me, and he said I should just do what he told me, but Dr. Strauss said he should explain it to me because I was beginning to question authority. I don't know what that means, but Professor Niemer looked like he was going to bite his lip off. Then he explained me very slow that the machine did lots of things to my mind. Some things it did just before I fall asleep, like teach me things when I'm very sleepy, and a little while after I start to fall asleep, I still hear the talk even if I don't see the pictures anymore. Other things is, at night, it's supposed to make me have dreams and remember things that happened a long time ago when I was a very little kid. It's scary. Oh, yes, I forgot. I asked Professor Niemer when I can go back to Miss Kinnian's class at the Adult Center, and he said soon Miss Kinnian will come to the college testing center to teach me special. I'm glad about that. I didn't see her so much since the operation, but she's nice. March 25. That crazy TV kept me up all night. How can I sleep with something yelling crazy things all night in my ears? And the nutty pictures. Wow. I don't know what it says when I'm up, so how am I going to know what it says when I'm sleeping? I asked Bert about it, and he says it's okay. He says my brains are learning just before I got to sleep, and that will help me when Miss Kinnian starts my lessons at the testing center. The testing center isn't a hospital for animals like I thought before. It's a laboratory for science. I don't know what science is, except I'm helping it with this experiment. Anyway, I don't know about that TV. I think it's crazy. If you can get smart when you're going to sleep, why do people go to school? I don't think that thing will work. I used to watch The Late Show and The Late Late Show on TV all the time before I went to sleep, and it never made me smart. Maybe only certain movies make you smart. Maybe like quiz shows. March 26th. How am I going to work in the daytime if that thing keeps waking me up at night? In the middle of the night I woke up, and I couldn't go back to sleep because it kept saying, "Remember, remember, remember." So I think I remembered something. I don't remember exactly, but it was about Miss Kinnian and the school where I learned about reading, and how I went there. A long time ago, once I asked Joe Carp how he learned to read, and if I could learn to read too. He laughed like he always done when I say something funny, and he says to me, "Charlie, why waste your time? They can't put any brains in where there ain't none." But Fanny Burden heard me, and she asked her cousin, who is a college student at Beekman, and she told me about the Adult Center for Retarded People at the Beekman College. She wrote the name down on a paper, and Frank laughed and said, "Don't go getting so educated that you won't talk to your old friends." I said, "Don't worry. I'll always keep my old friends, even if I can read and write." He was laughing, and Joe Carp was laughing, but Gimpy came in and told them to get back to making rolls. They're all good friends to me. After work, I walked over 6 blocks to the school, and I was scared. I was so happy I was going to learn to read that I bought a newspaper to take home with me and read after I learned. When I got there, it was a big, long hall with lots of people. I got scared of saying something wrong to somebody, so I started to go home. But I don't know why I turned around and went inside again. I waited until most everybody went away, except some people going over by a big time clock, like the one we have at the bakery. And I asked the lady if I could learn to read and write, because I wanted to read all the things in the newspaper, and I showed it to her. She was Miss Kinnian, but I didn't know it then. She said, "If you come back tomorrow and register, I'll start to teach you how to read. But you gotta understand, it will take a long time, maybe years, to learn to read." I told her I didn't know it took so long, but I wanted to learn anyway, because I made believe a lot of times. I mean, I pretend to people I know how to read, but it ain't true, and I wanted to learn. She shook my hand and said, "Glad to meet you, Mr. Gordon. I will be your teacher. My name is Miss Kinnian." So that's where I went to learn, and that's how I met Miss Kinnian. Thinking and remembering is hard, and now I don't sleep so good anymore. That TV is too loud. March 27. Now that I'm starting to have those dreams and remembering, Professor Niemer says I gotta go to therapy sessions with Dr. Strauss. He says therapy sessions is like when you feel bad, you talk to make it better. I told him, I don't feel bad, and I do plenty of talking all day, so why do I have to go to therapy? But he got sore and says I gotta go anyway. What therapy is that I gotta lay down on a couch, and Dr. Strauss sits in a chair near me, and I talk about anything that comes into my head. For a long time I didn't say nothing, because I couldn't think of nothing to say. Then I told him about the bakery and the things they do there. But it's silly for me to go to his office and lay down on the couch to talk, because I write it down in the progress reports anyway, and he could read it. So today I brought the progress report with me, and I told him maybe he could just read it and I could take a nap on the couch. I was very tired because that TV kept me up all night, but he said, nope, it don't work that way. I got to talk. So I talked, but then I fell asleep on the couch anyway, right in the middle. March 28. I got a headache. It's not from that TV this time. Dr. Strauss showed me how to keep the TV turned low, so now I can sleep. I don't hear a thing, and I still don't understand what it says. A few times I play it over in the morning to find out what I learned before I fell asleep and while I was sleeping, and I don't even know the words. Maybe it's another language or something. But most times it sounds American, but it talks too fast. I asked Dr. Strauss, what good is it to get smart in my sleep if I want to be smart when I'm awake? He says it's the same thing, and I have two minds. There's the subconscious and the conscious. That's how you spell it. And one don't tell the other what it's doing. They don't even talk to each other. That's why I dream. And boy, have I been having crazy dreams. Wow! Ever since that night TV. The late movie show. I forgot to ask Dr. Strauss if it was only me or if everybody has two minds like that. I just looked up the word in the dictionary Dr. Strauss gave me. Subconscious, adjective, of the nature of mental operations, yet not present in consciousness, as subconscious conflict of desires. There's more, but I still don't know what it means. This isn't a very good dictionary for dumb people like me. Anyway, the headache is from the party. Joe Carp and Frank Riley invited me to go with them after work to Halloran's bar for some drinks. I don't like to drink whiskey, but they said we'll have lots of fun. I had a good time. We played games, with me doing a dance on the top of the bar with a lampshade on my head and everyone laughing. Then Joe Carp said I should show the girls how I mop out the toilet in the bakery, and he got me a mop. I showed them, and everyone laughed when I told them that Mr. Donner said I was the best janitor and errand boy he ever had, because I like my job and do it good and never come late or miss a day, except for my operation. I said, Miss Kinnian always told me, Charlie, be proud of the work you do because you do your job good. Everybody laughed, and Frank said, that Miss Kinnian must be some cracked-up piece if she goes for Charlie. And Joe said, hey, Charlie, are you making out with her? I said I didn't know what that means. They gave me lots of drinks, and Joe said, Charlie is a card when he's potted. I think that means they like me. We have some good times, but I can't wait to be smart like my best friends, Joe Carp and Frank Riley. I don't remember how the party was over, but they asked me to go around the corner to see if it was raining, and when I came back, there was no one there. Maybe they went to find me. I looked for them all over till it was late, but I got lost, and I felt bad at myself for getting lost, because I bet Algernon could go up and down those streets 100 times and not get lost like I did. Then, I don't remember so good, but Mrs. Flynn says a nice policeman brought me back home. That same night, I dreamed about my mother and father, only I couldn't see her face. It was all white, and she was blurry. I was crying, because we were in a big department store, and I was lost and I couldn't find them, and I ran up and down the rows, around all the big counters in the store. Then a man came and took me in a big room with benches, and gave me a lollipop, and told me a big boy like me shouldn't cry because my mother and father would come to find me. Anyway, That's the dream. And I got a headache and a big lump on my head and black and blue marks all over. Joe Carp says maybe I got rolled or the cop let me have it. I don't think policemen do things like that. But anyway, I don't think I'll drink whiskey anymore. March 29. I beat Algernon. I didn't even know I beat him until Bert Selden told me. Then the second time I lost because I got so excited. But after that, I beat him 8 more times. I must be getting smart to beat a smart mouse like Algernon. But I don't feel smarter. I wanted to race some more, but Bert said that's enough for one day. He let me hold Algernon for a minute. Algernon is a nice mouse, soft like cotton. He blinks, and when he opens his eyes, they're black and pink on the edges. I asked, "Can I feed him?" Because I felt bad to beat him, and I wanted to be nice and make friends. Bert said, "No, Algernon is a very special mouse with an operation like mine. He was the first of all the animals to stay smart so long, and he said that Algernon is so smart he has to solve a problem with a lock that changes every time he goes in to eat, so he has to learn something new to get his food." That made me sad, because if he couldn't learn, he wouldn't be able to eat, and he'd be hungry. I don't think it's right to make you pass a test to eat. How would Bert like to have to pass a test every time he wants to eat? I think I'll be friends with Algernon. That reminds me. Dr. Strauss says I should write down all my dreams and the things I think, so when I come to his office I can tell them. I told him I don't know how to think yet, but he says he means more things like what I wrote about my mom and dad, and about when I started school at Miss Kinnian's, or anything that happened before the operation is thinking, and I wrote them in my progress report. I didn't know I was thinking and remembering. Maybe that means something is happening to me. I don't feel different, but I'm so excited I can't sleep. Dr. Strauss gave me some pink pills to make me sleep good. He says I gotta get lots of sleep, because that's when most of the changes happen in my brain. It must be true, because Uncle Herman used to sleep in our house all the time when he was out of work on the old sofa in the parlor. He was fat, and it was hard for him to get a job, because he used to paint people's houses, and he got very slow going up and down the ladder. When I once told my mom I wanted to be a painter like Uncle Herman, my sister Norma said, "Yeah, Charlie's going to be the artist of the family." And Dad slapped her face and told her not to be so goddamn nasty to her brother. I don't know what an artist is, but if Norma got slapped for saying it, I guess it's not a nice thing. I always feel bad when Norma got slapped for being mean to me. When I get smart, I'll go visit her. March 30. Tonight, after work, Miss Kinnian came to the teaching room near the laboratory. She looked glad to see me, but nervous. She looks younger than I remembered her. I told her I was trying very hard to be smart. She said, "I have confidence in you, Charlie, the way you struggled so much to read and write better than all the others. I know you can do it. At worst, you'll have it all for a little while, and you're doing something for other retarded people." We started to read a very hard book. I never read such a hard book before. It's called Robinson Crusoe, about a man who gets marooned on a desert island. He's smart and figures out all kinds of things so he can have a house and food, and he's a good swimmer. Only I feel sorry for him, because he's all alone and he has no friends. But I think there must be somebody else on the island, because there's a picture of him with his funny umbrella looking at feet prints. I hope he gets a friend, and not be so lonely. March 31. Miss Kinnian teaches me how to spell better. She says, look at a word, and close your eyes and say it over and over again until you remember. I have lots of trouble with through that you say through and enough and tough that you don't say enu and two. You gotta say enough and tough. That's how I used to write it before I started to get smart. I'm mixed up, but Miss Kinnian says don't worry. Spelling is not supposed to make sense. Progress Report 9. April 1st. Everybody in the bakery came to see me today, where I started my new job, working by the dough mixer. It happened like this. Oliver, who works on the mixer, quit yesterday. I used to help him out before, bringing the bags of flour over for him to put in the mixer. Anyway, I didn't know that I knew how to work the mixer. It's very hard, and Oliver went to baker's school for 1 year before he could learn how to be an assistant baker. But Joe Carp, he's my friend, he said, "Charlie, why don't you take over Oliver's job?" Everybody on the floor came around and they were laughing, and Frank Riley said, "Yes, Charlie, you've been here long enough. Go ahead, Gimpy ain't around and he won't know you tried it." I was scared because Gimpy is the head baker, and he told me never to go near the mixer because I would get hurt. Everyone said, "Do it," except Fanny Burden, who said, "Stop it, why don't you leave the poor man alone?" Frank Riley said, "Shut up, Fanny, it's April Fool's Day, and if Charlie works on the mixer, he might fix it good, so we'll all have the day off." I said, I couldn't fix the machine, but I could work it, because I've been watching Oliver ever since I got back. I worked the dough mixer, and everybody was surprised, especially Frank Riley. Fanny Burden got excited, because she said it took Oliver 2 years to learn how to mix the dough right, and he went to baker's school. Bernie Bate, who helps on the machine, said I did it faster than Oliver did, and better. Nobody laughed. When Gimpy came back and Fanny told him, he got sore at me for working on the mixer. But she said, "Watch him and see how he does it." They were playing him for an April Fool joke, and he fooled them instead. Gimpy watched, and I knew he was sore at me, because he don't like when people don't do what he tells them, just like Professor Niemer. But he saw how I worked the mixer, and he scratched his head and said, "I see it, but I don't believe it." Then he called Mr. Donner and told me to work it again so Mr. Donner could see it. I was scared he was going to be angry and holler at me, so after I was finished, I said, "Can I go back to my own job now? I got to sweep out the front of the bakery behind the counter." Mr. Donner looked at me funny for a long time. Then he said, "This must be some kind of April Fool's joke you guys are playing on me. What's the catch?" Gimpy said, "That's what I thought. It was some kind of a gag." He limped all around the machine, and he said to Mr. Donner, "I don't understand it either, but Charlie knows how to handle it. And I gotta admit it, he does a better job than Oliver." Everybody was crowded around and talking about it, and I got scared, because they all looked at me funny and they were excited. Frank said, "I told you there's something peculiar lately about Charlie." And Joe Carp says, "Yeah, I know what you mean." Mr. Donner sent everybody back to work, and he took me out to the front of the store with him. He said, "Charlie, I don't know how you done it, but it looks like you finally learned something. I want you to be careful and do the best you can. You got yourself a new job with a $5 raise." I said, "I don't want a new job, because I like to clean up and sweep and deliver and do things for my friends." But Mr. Donner said, "Never mind your friends. I need you for this job. I don't think much of a man who don't want to advance." I said, "What's advance mean?" He scratched his head and looked at me over his glasses. "Never mind that, Charlie. From now on, you work the mixer. That's advance." So now, instead of delivering packages and washing out the toilets and dumping the garbage, I'm the new mixer. That's advance. Tomorrow I'll tell Miss Kinnian. I think she'll be happy, but I don't know why Frank and Joe are mad at me. I asked Fanny, and she said, "Never mind those fools. This is April Fool's Day, and the joke backfired and made them the fools instead of you." I asked Joe to tell me what was the joke that backfired, and he said, "Go jump in the lake." I guess they're mad at me because I worked the machine, but they didn't get the day off like they thought. Does that mean I'm getting smarter? April 3rd. Finished Robinson Crusoe. I want to find out more about what happens to him, but Miss Kinnian says that's all there is. Why? April 4th. Miss Kinnian says I'm learning fast. She read some of my progress reports, and she looked at me kind of funny. She says I'm a fine person, and I'll show them all. I asked her why. She said, never mind, but I shouldn't feel bad if I find out that everybody isn't nice like I think. She said for a person who God gave so little to, you did more than a lot of people with brains they never even used. I said that all my friends are smart people, and they're good. They like me, and they never did anything that wasn't nice. Then she got something in her eye, and she had to run out to the ladies' room. While I was sitting in the teaching room waiting for her, I was wondering about how Miss Kinnian was a nice lady, like my mother used to be. I think I remember my mother told me to be good and always be friendly to people. She said, but always be careful because some people don't understand, and they might think you're trying to make trouble. That makes me remember when Mom had to go away, and they put me to stay in Mrs. Leroy's house, who lived next door. Mom went to the hospital. Dad said she wasn't sick or nothing, but she went to the hospital to bring me back a baby sister or a brother. I still don't know how they do that. I told them I want a baby brother to play with, and I don't know why they got me a sister instead, but she was nice, like a doll, only she cried all the time. I never hurt her or nothing. They put her in a crib in their room, and once I heard Dad say, "Don't worry, Charlie wouldn't harm her." She was like a bundle, all pink and screaming sometimes that I couldn't sleep, and when I went to sleep, she woke me up in the nighttime. One time, when they were in the kitchen and I was in my bed, she was crying. I got up to pick her up and hold her to get quiet the way Mom does. But then Mom came in yelling and took her away, and she slapped me so hard I fell on the bed. Then she started screaming, "Don't you ever touch her again! You'll hurt her! She's a baby! You got no business touching her!" I didn't know it then, but I guess I know it now, that she thought I was going to hurt the baby because I was too dumb to know what I was doing. Now that makes me feel bad, because I would never have hurt the baby. When I go to Dr. Strauss's office, I gotta tell him about that. April 6th. Today, I learned the comma. This is a comma, a period with a tail. Miss Kinnian says it's important because it makes writing better. She said somebody could lose a lot of money if a comma isn't in the right place. I got some money that I saved from my job and what the foundation pays me, but not much, and I don't see how a comma keeps you from losing it. But she says everybody uses commas, so I'll use them too. April 7th. I used the comma wrong. It's punctuation. Miss Kinnian told me to look up long words in the dictionary to learn to spell them. I said, "What's the difference if you can read it anyway?" She said, "It's part of your education." So from now on, I'll look up all the words I'm not sure how to spell. It takes a long time to write that way, but I think I'm remembering more and more. Anyway, that's how come I got the word punctuation right. It's that way in the dictionary. Miss Kinnian says a period is punctuation too, and there are lots of other marks to learn. I told her I thought she meant all the periods had to have tails and be called commas, but she said no. She said, "You gotta mix them up." She showed me how to mix them up, and now I can mix up all kinds of punctuation in my writing. There are lots of rules to learn, but I'm getting them in my head. One thing I like about Dear Miss Kinnian, that's the way it goes in a business letter if I ever go into business, is that she always gives me a reason when I ask. She's a genius. I wish I could be smart like her. Punctuation is fun. April 8th. What a dope I am. I didn't even understand what she was talking about. I read the grammar book last night, and it explains the whole thing. Then I saw it was the same way as Miss Kinnian was trying to tell me, but I didn't get it. I got up in the middle of the night, and the whole thing straightened out in my mind. Miss Kinnian said that the TV working just before I fell asleep and during the night helped out. She said I reached a plateau. That's like the flat top of a hill. After I figured out how punctuation worked, I read over all my old progress reports from the beginning. Boy, did I have crazy spelling and punctuation. I told Miss Kinnian I ought to go over the pages and fix all the mistakes, but she said, "No, Charlie. Professor Niemer wants them just as they are. That's why he lets you keep them after they're photostated, to see your own progress. You're coming along fast, Charlie." That made me feel good. After the lesson, I went down and played with Algernon. We don't race anymore. April 10th. I feel sick. Not like for a doctor, but inside my chest it feels empty, like getting punched and a heartburn at the same time. I wasn't going to write about it, but I guess I got to because it's important. Today was the first day I ever stayed home from work on purpose. Last night, Joe Carp and Frank Riley invited me to a party. There were lots of girls, and Gimpy was there, and Ernie, too. I remembered how sick I got last time I drank too much, so I told Joe I didn't want to drink anything. He gave me a plain Coke instead. It tasted funny, but I thought it was just a bad taste in my mouth. We had a lot of fun for a while. "Dance with Ellen," Joe said. "She'll teach you the steps." Then he winked at her like he had something in his eye. She said, "Why don't you leave him alone?" He slapped me on the back. "This is Charlie Gordon, my buddy, my pal. He's no ordinary guy. He's been promoted to working on the dough mixing machine. All I did was ask you to dance with him and give him a good time. What's wrong with that?" He pushed me up close against her, so she danced with me. I fell 3 times, and I couldn't understand why, because no one else was dancing besides Ellen and me. And all the time I was tripping because somebody's foot was always sticking out. They were all around in a circle, watching and laughing at the way we were doing the steps. They laughed harder every time I fell, and I was laughing too because it was so funny. But the last time it happened, I didn't laugh. I picked myself up, and Joe pushed me down again. Then I saw the look on Joe's face, and it gave me a funny feeling in my stomach. "He's a scream," one of the girls said. Everybody was laughing. "Oh, you were right, Frank," choked Ellen. "He's a one-man sideshow." Then she said, "Here, Charlie, have a fruit." She gave me an apple, but when I bit into it, it was fake. Then Frank started laughing, and he said, "I told you he'd eat it. Can you imagine anyone dumb enough to eat wax fruit?" Joe said, "I ain't laughed so much since we sent him around the corner to see if it was raining that night we ditched him at Halloran's." Then I saw a picture that I remembered in my mind. When I was a kid, and the children in the block let me play with them, hide and go seek, and I was it. After I counted up to 10 over and over on my fingers, I went to look for the others. I kept looking until it got cold and dark and I had to go home. But I never found them. And I never knew why. What Frank said reminded me. That was the same thing that happened at Halloran's. And that was what Joe and the rest of them were doing. Laughing at me. And the kids playing hide-and-go-seek were playing tricks on me, and they were laughing at me, too. The people at the party were a bunch of blurred faces, all looking down and laughing at me. "Look at him, his face is red. He's blushing. Charlie's blushing. Hey, Ellen, what'd you do to Charlie? I never saw him act like this before." Boy, Ellen sure got him worked up. I didn't know what to do or where to turn. Her rubbing up against me made me feel funny. Everyone was laughing at me, and all of a sudden I felt naked. I wanted to hide myself so they wouldn't see. I ran out of the apartment. It was a large apartment house with lots of halls, and I couldn't find my way to the staircase. I forgot all about the elevator. Then, after, I found the stairs and ran out into the street and walked for a long time before I went to my room. I never knew before that Joe and Frank and the others liked to have me around just to make fun of me. Now I know what they mean when they say to pull a Charlie Gordon. I'm ashamed. And another thing. I dreamed about that girl, Ellen, dancing and rubbing up against me, and when I woke up, the sheets were wet and messy. April 13th. Still didn't go back to work at the bakery. I told Mrs. Flynn, my landlady, to call and tell Mr. Donner I'm sick. Mrs. Flynn looks at me lately like she's scared of me. I think it's a good thing about finding out how everybody laughs at me. I thought about it a lot. It's because I'm so dumb, and I don't even know when I'm doing something dumb. People think it's funny when a dumb person can't do things the same way they can. Anyway, now I know I'm getting a little smarter every day. I know punctuation, and I can spell good. I like to look up all the hard words in the dictionary, and I remember them. And I try to write these progress reports very careful, but that's hard to do. I'm reading a lot now, and Miss Kinnian says I read very fast. And I even understand a lot of the things I'm reading about, and they stay in my mind. There are times when I can close my eyes and think of a page, and it all comes back, like a picture. But other things come into my head, too. Sometimes I close my eyes, and I see a clear picture. Like this morning, just after I woke up, I was laying in bed with my eyes open. It was like a big hole opened up in the walls of my mind, and I can just walk through. I think it's far back, a long time ago when I first started working at Donner's Bakery. I see the street where the bakery is, fuzzy at first, and then it gets patchy, with some things so real they're right here, now, in front of me, and other things stay blurred, and I'm not sure. A little old man with a baby carriage made into a pushcart with a charcoal burner, and the smell of roasting chestnuts and snow on the ground. A young fellow, skinny, with wide eyes and a scared look on his face, looking up at the store sign. What does it say? Blurred letters in a way that don't make sense. I know now that the sign says Donner's Bakery, but looking back in my memory at the sign, I can't read the words through his eyes. None of the signs make sense. I think that fellow with the scared look on his face is me. Bright neon lights, Christmas trees and sidewalk peddlers, people bundled in coats with collars up and scarves around their necks. But he has no gloves. His hands are cold, and he puts down a heavy bundle of brown paper bags. He's stopping to watch the little mechanical toys that the peddler winds up. The tumbling bear, the dog jumping, the seal spinning a ball on its nose. Tumbling, jumping, spinning. If he had all those toys for himself, he would be the happiest person in the world. He wants to ask the red-faced peddler with his fingers sticking through the brown cotton gloves if he can hold the tumbling bear for a minute, but he's afraid. He picks up the bundle of paper bags and puts it on his shoulder. He's skinny, but he's strong from many years of hard work. "Charlie, Charlie, fathead barley." Children circle around him, laughing and teasing him like little dogs snapping at his feet. Charlie smiles at them. He'd like to put down his bundle and play games with them, but when he thinks about it, the skin on his back twitches, and he feels the way the older boys throw things at him. Coming back to the bakery, he sees some boys standing in the door of a dark hallway. "Hey, look, there's Charlie." "Hey, Charlie, what you got there? Want to shoot some craps?" "Come here, we won't hurt you." But there's something about the doorway, the dark hall, the laughing, that makes his skin twitch again. He tries to know what it is, but all he can remember is their dirt and piss all over his clothes, and Uncle Herman shouting when he came home all covered with filth, and how Uncle Herman ran out with a hammer in his hand to find the boys who did that to him. Charlie backs away from the boys laughing in the hallway, drops the bundle, picks it up again, and runs the rest of the way to the bakery. "What took you so long, Charlie?" shouts Gimpy from the doorway to the back of the bakery. Charlie pushes through the swinging doors to the back of the bakery and sets down the bundle on one of the skids. He leans against the wall, shoving his hands into his pockets. He wishes he had his spinner. He likes it back here in the bakery, where the floors are white with flour, whiter than the sooty walls and ceiling. The thick soles of his own high shoes are crusted with white, and there's white in the stitching and lace eyes, and under his nails, and in the cracked, chapped skin of his hands. He relaxes here, squatting against the wall, leaning back in a way that tilts his baseball cap with the D forward over his eyes. He likes the smell of flour, sweet dough, bread and cakes and rolls baking. The oven is crackling and makes him sleepy. Sweet, warm sleep. Suddenly, falling, twisting, head hitting against the wall, someone has kicked his legs out from under him. That's all I can remember. I can see it all clearly, but I don't know why it happened. It's like when I used to go to the movies. The first time I never understood because they went too fast, but after I saw the picture 3 or 4 times, I used to understand what they were saying. I've got to ask Dr. Strauss about it. April 14th. Dr. Strauss says the important thing is to keep recalling memories, like the one I had yesterday, and to write them down. Then, when I come into his office, we can talk about them. Dr. Strauss is a psychiatrist and a neurosurgeon. I didn't know that. I thought he was just a plain doctor. But when I went to his office this morning, he told me about how important it is for me to learn about myself so that I can understand my problems. I said I didn't have any problems. He laughed, and then he got up from his chair and went to the window. The more intelligent you become, the more problems you'll have, Charlie. Your intellectual growth is going to outstrip your emotional growth, and I think you'll find that as you progress, there will be many things you'll want to talk to me about. I just want you to remember that this is the place for you to come when you need help. I still don't know what it's all about, but he said, even if I don't understand my dreams or memories or why I have them, sometime in the future, they're all going to connect up, and I'll learn more about myself. He said the important thing is to find out what those people in my memories are saying. It's all about me when I was a boy, and I've got to remember what happened. I never knew about these things before. It's like, if I get intelligent enough, I'll understand all the words in my mind, and I'll know about those boys standing in the hallway, and about my Uncle Herman, and my parents. But what he means is, then I'm going to feel bad about it all, and I might get sick in my mind. So I've got to come to his office twice a week now, to talk about the things that bother me. We just sit there, and I talk, and Dr. Strauss listens. It's called therapy, and that means talking about things will make me feel better. I told him, One of the things that bothers me is about women. Like dancing with that girl, Ellen, got me all excited. So we talked about it, and I got a funny feeling while I was talking. Cold and sweaty and a buzzing inside my head, and I thought I was going to throw up. Maybe because I always thought it was dirty and bad to talk about that. But Dr. Strauss said what happened to me after the party was a wet dream, and it's a natural thing that happens to boys. So, even if I'm getting intelligent and learning a lot of new things, he thinks I'm still a boy about women. It's confusing, but I'm going to find out all about my life. April 15th. I'm reading a lot these days, and almost everything is staying in my mind. Besides history and geography and arithmetic, Miss Kinnian says I should start learning foreign languages. Professor Niemer gave me some more tapes to play while I sleep. I still don't know how the conscious and unconscious mind works, but Dr. Strauss says not to worry yet. He made me promise that when I start learning college subjects in a couple of weeks, I won't read any books on psychology. That is until he gives me permission. He says it'll confuse me and make me think about psychological theories instead of about my own ideas and feelings. But it's okay to read novels. This week, I read The Great Gatsby, An American Tragedy, and Look Homeward, Angel. I never knew about men and women doing things like that. April 16th. I feel a lot better today, but I'm still angry that all the time people were laughing and making fun of me. When I become intelligent, the way Professor Niemer says, with much more than twice my IQ of 70, then maybe people will like me and be my friends. I'm not sure what IQ is, anyway. Professor Niemer said it was something that measured how intelligent you were, like a scale in the drugstore weighs pounds. But Dr. Strauss had a big argument with him and said an IQ didn't weigh intelligence at all. He said an IQ showed how much intelligence you could get, like the numbers on the outside of a measuring cup. You still had to fill the cup up with stuff. When I asked Bert Selden, who gives me my intelligence tests and works with Algernon, he said that some people would say both of them were wrong, and according to the things he's been reading up on, the IQ measures a lot of different things, including some of the things you learned already, and it really isn't a good measure of intelligence at all. So I still don't know what IQ is, and everybody says it's something different. Mine is about 100 now, and it's going to be over 150 soon, but they still have to fill me up with the stuff. I didn't want to say anything, but I don't see how, if they don't know what it is or where it is, how they know how much of it you've got. Professor Niemer says I have to take a Rorschach test the day after tomorrow. I wonder what that is. April 17th. I had a nightmare last night, and this morning, after I woke up, I free associated, the way Dr. Strauss told me to do when I remember my dreams. Think about the dream, and just let my mind wander until other thoughts come up in my mind. I keep on doing that until my mind goes blank. Dr. Strauss says that it means I've reached a point where my subconscious is trying to block my conscious from remembering. It's a wall between the present and the past. Sometimes the wall stays up, and sometimes it breaks down, and I can remember what's behind it. Like this morning. The dream was about Miss Kinnian reading my progress reports. In the dream, I sit down to write, but I can't write or read anymore. It's all gone. I get frightened, so I ask Gimpy at the bakery to write for me. But when Miss Kinnian reads the report, she gets angry and tears the pages up, because they've got dirty words in them. When I get home, Professor Niemer and Dr. Strauss are waiting for me, and they give me a beating for writing dirty things in the progress report. When they leave me, I pick up the torn pages, but they turn into lace valentines, with blood all over them. It was a horrible dream, but I got out of bed and wrote it all down, And then I started to free associate. Bakery, baking, the urn, someone kicking me, fall down, bloody all over, writing, big pencil on a red valentine, a little gold heart, a locket, a chain, all covered with blood, and he's laughing at me. The chain is from a locket, spinning around, flashing the sunlight into my eyes, and I like to watch it spin, watch the chain, all bunched up and twisting and spinning, and a little girl is watching me. Her name is Harriet. Harriet, we all love Harriet. And then there's nothing. It's blank again. Miss Kinnian reading my progress reports over my shoulder. Then we're at the adult center for the retarded, and she's reading over my shoulder as I write my compositions. School changes into PS-13, and I'm 11 years old, and Miss Kinnian is 11 years old too. But now she's not Miss Kinnian. She's a little girl with dimples and long curls, and her name is Harriet. We all love Harriet. It's Valentine's Day. I remember what happened at PS-13, and why they had to change my school and send me to PS-222. It was because of Harriet. I see Charlie, 11 years old. He has a little gold-color locket he once found in the street. There's no chain, but he has it on a string, and he likes to twirl the locket so that it bunches up the string and then watch it unwind, spinning around with the sun flicking into his eyes. Sometimes, when the kids play catch, they let him play in the middle, and he tries to get the ball before one of them catches it. He likes to be in the middle, even if he never catches the ball. And once, when Jaime Roth dropped the ball by mistake and he picked it up, they wouldn't let him throw it, but he had to go in the middle again. When Harriet passes by, the boys stop playing and look at her. All the boys love Harriet. When she shakes her head, her curls bounce up and down, and she has dimples. Charlie doesn't know why they make such a fuss about a girl, and why they always want to talk to her. He'd rather play ball or kick the can or ring the Levio than talk to a girl. But all the boys are in love with Harriet, so he's in love with her too. She never teases him like the other kids, and he does tricks for her. He walks on the desks when the teacher isn't there. He throws erasers out the window, scribbles all over the blackboard and walls, and Harriet always screeches and giggles. "Oh, look at Charlie, ain't he funny? Oh, ain't he silly?" It's Valentine's Day, and the boys are talking about Valentines they're going to give Harriet. So Charlie says, "I'm going to give Harriet a Valentine too." They laugh, and Barry says, "Where you going to get a Valentine?" "I'm going to get her a pretty one. You'll see." But he doesn't have any money for a Valentine, so he decides to give Harriet his locket that is heart-shaped like the Valentines in the store windows. That night, he takes tissue paper from his mother's drawer, and it takes a long time to wrap and tie it with a piece of red ribbon. Then he takes it to Jaime Roth the next day during lunch period in school and asks Jaime to write on the paper for him. He tells Jaime to write, "Dear Harriet, I think you are the most prettiest girl in the whole world. I like you very much and I love you. I want you to be my Valentine. Your friend, Charlie Gordon." Jaime prints very carefully in large letters on the paper, laughing all the time, and he tells Charlie, "Boy, this'll knock her eyes out. Wait till she sees this." Charlie is scared, but he wants to give Harriet that locket, so he follows her home from school and waits until she goes into her house. Then he sneaks into the hall and hangs the package on the inside of the doorknob. He rings the bell twice and runs across the street to hide behind the tree. When Harriet comes down, she looks around to see who rang the bell. Then she sees the package. She takes it and goes upstairs. Charlie goes home from school, and he gets a spanking because he took the tissue paper and ribbon out of his mother's drawer without telling her. But he doesn't care. Tomorrow Harriet will wear the locket and tell all the boys he gave it to her. Then they'll see. The next day he runs all the way to school, but it's too early. Harriet isn't there yet, and he's excited. But when Harriet comes in, she doesn't even look at him. She isn't wearing the locket, and she looks sore. He does all kinds of things when Mrs. Jansen isn't watching. He makes funny faces. He laughs out loud. He stands up on his seat and wiggles his fanny. He even throws a piece of chalk at Harold. But Harriet doesn't look at him even once. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she'll wear it tomorrow. She passes by in the hallway, but when he comes over to ask her, she pushes past him without saying a word. Down in the schoolyard, her two big brothers are waiting for him. Gus pushes him. "You little bastard! Did you write this dirty note to my sister?" Charlie says he didn't write any dirty notes. "I just gave her a valentine." Oscar, who was on the football team before he graduated from high school, grabs Charlie's shirt and tears off 2 buttons. "You keep away from my kid's sister, you degenerate. You don't belong in this school anyway." He pushes Charlie over to Gus, who catches him by the throat. Charlie is scared and starts to cry. Then they start to hurt him. Oscar punches him in the nose, and Gus knocks him on the ground and kicks him in the side, and then both of them kick him, one and then the other. And some of the other kids in the yard, Charlie's friends, come running, screaming and clapping hands. "Fight! Fight! They're beating up Charlie!" His clothes are torn, and his nose is bleeding, and one of his teeth is broken. And after Gus and Oscar go away, he sits on the sidewalk and cries. The blood tastes sour. The other kids just laugh and shout, "Charlie got a licking! Charlie got a licking!" And then Mr. Wagner, one of the caretakers from the school, comes and chases them away. He takes Charlie into the boys' room and tells him to wash off the blood and dirt from his face and hands before he goes back home. I guess I was pretty dumb, because I believed what people told me. I shouldn't have trusted Jaime, or anyone. I never remembered any of this before today, but it came back to me after I thought about the dream. It has something to do with the feeling about Miss Kinney and reading my progress reports. Anyway, I'm glad now I don't have to ask anyone to write things for me. Now I can do it for myself. But I just realized something. Harriet never gave me back my locket.